Today I want to talk about how creative restrictions can aid in storytelling. Although big budgets and impressive sets can aid in storytelling, sometimes restrictions placed upon writers make for the best episodes of television shows. Because the budget is lower, the writer must work harder to impress an audience and engage them in their characters and storytelling. Two of some of my favourite television shows have evolved over the years. Both Doctor Who and Star Trek, despite having very low budgets, started out with a bold creative vision. Despite having very low budgets, both these shows have become cult classics, and although their production values have increased significantly, they've remained largely the same in vision. A limited budget makes everything harder for a creative team, and other times not so much. For example, both Star Trek The Next Generation and the revival of Doctor Who had very little cinematic direction. Often Star Trek employed long takes with little variation across its episodes. The show was largely lit the same, and the small sets meant less room for impressive camera blocking. With 20 plus episodes filmed yearly, the show didn't have time to make the show visually stunning. It largely depended on good stories and reliable characters. Similarly, Doctor Who remained very Earth-based despite being a show highlighting a space-hopping alien. Often the Doctor would be seen on Earth, and sometimes when going to other worlds, these would feel quite small and familiar to a human perspective. These are both television shows, but they both feel very restrained in impressive effect sequences or wild set pieces. Both of these shows are arguably visually unimpressive, but they're nonetheless fantastic TV shows. Although a production team might disagree, for me a limited budget isn't necessarily detrimental to entertainment value. If the budget is so limited that the show can't tell good stories or invest you in the universe, that can be a problem, but hokey effects and cheap sets shouldn't necessarily be off-putting. In the age of limited series and streaming services, younger generations have become accustomed to TV shows looking visually stunning, or at least high quality. This has only been furthered by the use of LED walls and green screen, more advanced motion capture, higher picture quality, and so on. Unlike in earlier years, the line between TV shows and movies has become more blurred. In older generations, TV shows generally looked a lot lower in quality due to lack of time and budget, and feature films felt unique. In an age of television, movies felt distinctly different. Watching a movie was more of an event, with feature films feeling extremely different from the TV medium. It seems people are drawn to theatres less these days, waiting for movies to release on streaming from the comfort of your home. Though movies are still more expensive than TV shows, in an age of CGI and high resolution, the line is less distinct. Often we'll watch TV shows that feel so epic in scale and have such high quality production design or colour grading that they feel like movies. For example, shows like Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, and Better Call Saul look spectacular. These examples specifically are pretty high budget, but even smaller budget shows these days generally look good. Although big budgets generally make projects feel epic, with these budgets can come huge problems. With more money, this allows some creatives to highlight spectacle or action over a good story, and rely on these sequences to keep viewers engaged. Or if a show does have good characters, overuse of spectacle can detract from what we really watch a television show or movie for. This of course depends on the viewer. I largely watch something for the emotional threads. I enjoy grounded characters, people with depth. And when I'm not watching a character with depth, it's generally because I feel captivated by that character or story in some way, perhaps because the character feels relatable, or they're simply confronted with interesting scenarios. Although the Marvel Cinematic Universe is popular, I generally find their movies bland. These films are inherently action-based, but that doesn't mean you can't craft a good tale with action. Raimi's Spider-Man relied on character challenges and good performances to tell compelling stories, with the action balanced well with character depth. If you strip every single action scene from those movies, the story told is still compelling, and the characters interesting. Those movies have heart and humour, whereas newer superhero movies largely feel the same. Generally, they're CGI-heavy action epics, but we can't invest because the characters are so stale. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is highly humorous and childish as Spider-Man, but he has very little depth as Peter Parker. There's a lack of balance between the two personas, with generic supporting characters and villains undermining a good story. I feel if you remove the Spider-Man part, Homecoming feels very stale, like a rom-com that lacks flavour or human challenge. Opinions will vary of course, but I feel this plagues many movies and oversaturates the market. Audiences are becoming accustomed to this as a medium form, and it means the development of more niche media is narrowing. Not every character can be realistic or interesting, but I feel like generic characters are growing in mainstream media. There are of course still prolific creatives that nail the balance. Christopher Nolan, for example, creates atmospheric movies with care, highly practical cinematic works that feel like event viewing. In an age of nostalgia and green screen, it's important to support these creatives, to tell Hollywood that your attention can be held when something is made with craft, and that those projects can make lots of money. Creatives that do things differently are seen less on the big screen, but there's a reason their stuff works. It's easier to rely on effects teams for production design or make less interesting characters, but that shouldn't become the new normal. Russell T Davies is another creative force who knows how to nail this balance. His works are generally character-driven, based on family dynamics, humorous dialogue, and characters who feel deep. When he revived Doctor Who in 2005, he stuck to the campy tone of the series, but updated the characters for the modern era. The companions in Doctor felt three-dimensional, and the cheap VFX or locations never undermined the series. This was very much a human show that had an extraordinary vision, and the ordinary was married with extraordinary elements. Casual audiences would have plenty to cheer on, but the sci-fi fans would also enjoy the plots enough to feel satisfied. Even when extending the Whoniverse out in shows like The Sarah Jane Adventures and Torchwood, the same formula was applied. His shows outside of Doctor Who have something to say, and even when given big budgets, he never loses sight of character and emotion, driving forces of any drama. Recently, Russell T Davies returned to Doctor Who, with additional money coming from Disney+. This understandably caused fear in fans that they might lose the heart the show had long provided, but after years of bland characterization, he revived character depth. The show looks impressive compared to his original run, but the CGI and huge TARDIS set only complements the stories being told. The show doesn't linger on effect shots, and though the set pieces may feature more impressive effects, the characters dominate the screen time. Yes, the show notably looks a lot better, however it's married perfectly with what worked in his original run, and indeed his writing style in general. His writing is dictating stories, not the allocated budget. For fans that only watch shows with more contemporary budgets, they will hopefully be drawn into the character work, which was never great in the Chibnall era despite that era looking great. With Russell's return, it's the perfect marriage to make a good story. The characters are in the spotlight, and the top-notch production design only enhances what we're already invested in. Importantly, both Star Trek and Doctor Who look more impressive now, but these franchises feel the same. Despite Star Trek being a show that is about alien planets and species, the show often has smaller scale stories and bottle episodes. Many episodes featured a focus on one character for the full show, such as Data's Day, a fan favourite episode. Through time travel or parallel universes, the show made it exciting to always come back to that one set, the Enterprise. Part of the enjoyment in watching is seeing crew members continue to develop, enjoy the friendships, or feel like you're coming back home. The formula still works in newer shows like Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks that maintain this aspect. The sets may look more impressive, but the formula is the same, and the Enterprise is still that home for the audience. The same way that Earth is a home for Doctor Who, and the TARDIS is largely a sci-fi vehicle for plots and adventures. In both shows, alien planets aren't explored often, but the vision and ideas propel great stories. We buy into the larger universe and the stories being told because of the engaging characters, or indeed how homely the TARDIS or Enterprise become. The best franchises and stories should be ones we buy into, and I tend to be not invested in the computer-generated action that dominates the market. What happened to heart and reality? What happened to subverting expectations? This is why movies and TV shows with huge budgets often fail to make back their money, even with iconic characters involved. If you look at the Star Trek TOS movies, they feel like bigger budget episodes for the most part, albeit with more action and villains. Those films used a television mentality for much of production and never felt jarringly different from the TV show. All 6 of those movies performed reasonably well. When J.J. Abrams put an alternate timeline take on Trek years later, his huge budget action-driven spectacle failed its characters and was unsustainable to produce. It essentially turned Star Trek from an exploratory franchise to an action-driven fest. Notably, Abrams didn't care much for Star Trek either. I guess what I'm saying is that when you rely solely upon a name or brand without creating good stories or characters, audiences will inevitably become tired of your product. Huge budgets ruin visions when the creators don't prioritize heart and emotion. So when watching your next flashy TV show, ask yourself if this show would be anywhere near as endearing on a shoestring budget. Is the shoe without polish still a nice shoe? Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please subscribe and consider joining Patreon. Links in the description below.